gonna get in line and do right.
All right, peace and blessings, Assalamu alaikum, shalom, welcome, everyone. We are back with another great program today. Our topic that we're talking about is building our own reality, a local and global war on defamation. I think it's very clear to us that in order for us to be, I guess we would even have to define for us successful. What does that look like? What does that mean? You know, I think white folks, they describe it as, you know, a family having 2.1 children, 2 cars and whatever is their understanding of success. I don't know how you get to have 2.1 children, but that's partially what they describe. Doc, how would you sum up success? What would success look like for Black Americans in America? What would success look like? How would we define that?
You know, it's hard to be, because we're not a monolithic people. So it's kind of hard to talk about what success would look like for us as a group, because we have so many different sets of priorities and goals and things like that, and desires. Some of them we were innately born with them. Some of them, they were socialized into us, and we've come to value those things. So that's kind of hard to answer, but I think that if you were looking at it from the macro level, it would quite simply be, number one, ensuring that Black people still exist on this planet, within this nation, when we leave this earth. We also have to really look at it from a standpoint of leaving this place. And when I say this place, I mean nation, community, race, family, in a better place, in a better space than what we found it. So for me, success are those things, that leaving this place and leaving my sons equipped, prepared, and ready to continue the race.
All right. Don't you think that, or do you think that that there is a level of success that, regardless of your station in life as a Black person, that we could agree on that this is success? Because even when we think about it, you know, all Black people want freedom, justice, and equality. They want to be treated equal like anybody else. They want, the laws of the land to be just. You know, they want to be able to provide for themselves and their families. I think all of that is just regular across the board. Now, some Black people may want to be basketball players, some may want to be football players, some may want to be doctors, singers, this and that. That's where I see the breaking off at. But even on those levels, there's still a level of generality that touches us all across the board, regardless of whether we're rich, middle class, or poor.
Yeah, but see, my thing is that I hear what you're saying, and there's a part of me that wants to agree, but then there's another part of me that in many ways looks at it as, if you were to allow, let's say $1 million, if you were to give people $1 million and tell them they have this $1 million to live and spend however they choose to, but they could not be involved in politics. They could not be involved in improving the mind and what have you. They could just use this money to consume, to be the ultimate consumer. I would venture to guess, and it's not necessarily a Black thing, I think it's an American thing. And I would venture to guess that the majority of Americans would, in many ways, take that deal and would take the money and go and live a life of hyper consumption. I don't have that faith in people anymore that they're even aware of what rights are, that they're even aware of what a truly good life looks like and building a truly good life. I don't have that. I don't have that belief in people anymore because I've run into too many people who are, for lack of a more appropriate way of saying it, they're living for today and have no real understanding of even what's happening around them in this day. They're just trying to not even get from day to day, they're trying to get from moment to moment, especially when you consider this economic climate that we're in right now.
And I think that, of course, that is very true what you said. And dealing with us as a people, we're not on the same start page like everybody else. We're way behind that mark.
We're not on the same start page, even within the race. And that's one of the more difficult things for us to really accept, is that socioeconomic differences and class differences are real prevalent and prominent within the race. I'm thinking about this week in class, talking with my students, and we all have our own peculiarities in regards to what we want to focus on and what students we take an interest in and what have you. And for a lot of Black faculty, it's Black students. For, I would imagine, white faculty, it would be white students. My background is a little bit different because and these are the students that I gravitate to regardless of race, first generation students, because I'm first gen. So I always shout out to the first generation students and tell them, listen, you can do this. And these are some of the steps that you would have to go through to be able to make this happen. I have maybe 25% of my class, 1 out of 4, are still first gen, which is in many ways shocking in 2025. But those who are not first gen, I was lecturing this week about the Industrial Revolution and the Great Migration, and how the shifting patterns of Black folk, the demographic shifts and what have you, really impacted Black America and exposed a huge difference between Black folk who had never been in the South and those who were migrating north. We had a conflict there. But many of these non-first gen students, and I have some students who are 4th, 5th generation just at the school I work at, they express they have no connection at all, no affinity for, no thoughts of even pursuing a connection or affinity for Black folk who live in urban America. They have no connection to them. And they, and they're not concerned with their issues. They're not concerned with what happens to them. They're not even concerned with police brutality unless it touches upon them directly. And there's sort of a funkiness that comes along with those types of perspectives. And part of that funkiness is, and it mimics in many ways what you would hear coming from white America, just if we can use a general term of white America. Those people must have done something to cause that. There's never or rarely a benefit of the doubt. And you're finding a lot more when you look at some of these YouTubers. These cats are conservatives.
Mm-hmm.
Their talking points are conservative talking points. It's just what it is. And I think that I know that they're in error. And the reason that I say that they're in error in regards to a lot of their analysis and a lot of the things that they talk about is that you've allowed the concept of social responsibility, economic restraint, logical decision making to be placed under the conservative umbrella. And Black folk have always been morally prudent and economically reliant upon each other. They relied upon each other economically. To allow that to be cordoned off as if they're conservative values is wrong. It's wrong. Those aren't conservative values. Those are values that have, if you want to characterize them in any way, that are hallmarks of Black America. We've always lived like that. For anyone who has any understanding of African American history, we've had to live like that. It's where some of the more popular sayings, like one that pops in my head right now, is the hip hop saying of "We all we got." We've always relied upon each other, but I see that I've seen that gradually just dissipating and fading away.
And how powerful do you think that part of our problem comes from that we don't have our own understanding of who we are as a people? We don't have our own shared starting point, meaning, how do we accept ourselves and see ourselves?
You're taking me back, and I've talked about this here often. Take me right back to W.E.B. Du Bois, The Souls of Black Folk. You're talking about page 1, paragraph 2, when Du Bois says it is a peculiar sensation to view oneself through the eyes of another. What in essence is happening, has happened, and will continue to happen is quite simply you have allowed people who not only don't look like you and aren't from where you're from, create the intellectual diet for your people. And that intellectual diet, which isn't always, if we can continue with the nutrition metaphor, isn't always nutritious, has resulted in our people not having a cohesive thought about not just on how we accomplish something, but even where the destination is. And that's why I'm not willing to say that we all agree that we want to live a certain way, we want to do this, we want to do that, because many of these people have no real understanding of what freedom even looks like. They just want stuff. They just want things, and that's a dangerous position to be in.
Definitely. We're going to look at this psychological concept called the looking glass of self, this short video, and then come back and discuss it and see how does this fit in our situation. Oops.
And self-identity formation. The looking glass self-theory, proposed by sociologist Charles Horton Cooley, provides a valuable framework for understanding the process of socialization and the formation of self-identity. Cooley's theory suggests that individuals develop their sense of self through their interactions with others and the perceptions they believe others have of them. This video explores the looking glass self-theory in the context of socialization, shedding light on its key components and its implications for individuals' self-concept and social development. The components of the looking glass self. According to the looking glass self theory, individuals develop their self-concept based on three primary components: imagining how we appear to others. Individuals imagine how they are perceived by others in various social situations. They try to understand how their behavior, appearance, and actions might be interpreted by others, forming a mental image of how they are seen. Interpreting others' reactions. Individuals interpret the reactions and responses of others towards them. This includes verbal and nonverbal cues, such as facial expressions, body language, and tone of voice. They take these reactions into consideration as they develop a perception of how others see and judge them. Incorporating others' judgments. Based on their interpretations of others' reactions, individuals internalize and incorporate these judgments into their self-concept. They create an idea of how others evaluate their qualities, abilities, and worth. This self-perception is influenced by the perceived expectations, norms, and values of the surrounding social environment. Socialization in the looking glass self. The looking glass self theory highlights the role of socialization in shaping individuals' self-identity. From early childhood, individuals begin to engage in social interactions, seeking validation and feedback from others. Through these interactions, they develop an understanding of how they are perceived and valued by others, shaping their self-concept and self-esteem. Family, peers, educational institutions, and society at large serve as significant agents of socialization. The feedback and perceptions received from these socializing agents shape individuals' beliefs about themselves, their abilities, and their place in society. For example, if a child receives positive feedback and encouragement for their academic achievements, they may develop a positive self-image as a good student. Implications for self-identity formation. The looking glass self-theory has several implications for self-identity formation. The social construction of identity. The theory suggests that one's self-identity is not solely based on internal traits or characteristics, but is socially constructed through interactions and perception. Individuals develop their self-concept by considering the social feedback they receive and internalizing others' judgment. Role of social comparison. Social comparison plays a significant role in the looking glass self-process. Individuals compare themselves to others and evaluate their own worth based on these comparisons. They may strive to meet perceived social expectations or conform to societal norms to gain acceptance and validation. Formation of self-esteem. The looking glass self-theory suggests that individuals' self-esteem is influenced by how they perceive others' evaluations of them. Positive feedback and acceptance from others contribute to higher self-esteem, while negative judgments may lead to lower self-esteem. Continual process. The process of the looking glass self is ongoing throughout life. As individuals engage in new social contexts and encounter different people, their self-concept evolves. Feedback and perceptions from various socializing agents continue to shape and influence self-identity. Conclusion. The looking glass self-theory provides valuable insights into the process of socialization and the formation of self-identity. It highlights the social nature of self-concept, emphasizing that individuals develop their sense of self through their interactions with others and the perceptions they believe others have of them. By understanding the dynamics of the looking glass self, we gain a deeper appreciation for the profound impact of social interactions and societal expectations on individuals' self-identity and social development.
Right. So once segregation ended, right, black.
Okay. So there we have this social glass, looking at yourself through the social lens of how others portray you. Doc, do you find that that's true when it comes to us, or you disagree?
I believe that the framework of what he's talking about is true. I really do. That you're born with what I would term a personality. That's something different. But from what he's talking about. But the idea of the socialization process of who you become, what you value, and those types of things, I believe that in many ways he's probably spot on in regards to that. We gravitate towards what we're celebrated to as far as doing. You know, I'm a reader to this day because my mother read to me. You know, that was valued in my home, that, you know, you read, you study, you work hard in this area. Athletics was not, if you wanted to you could, they would support you, but it wasn't an emphasis in regards to what it is that you're supposed to do with your life. So yeah, I pretty much agree with that. The dangerous part though comes, and this is sort of why I'm in many ways hesitant to go all in on supporting his theory, is that because everything is different when you're looking through the lens of poor Black folk.
Mhm.
His study in many ways holds true. I see a lot of validity when you're talking about that working class to middle class Black experience,
Mhm.
those who are striving to move on up. But I see a way and a path for those who would believe in this theory to absolve white America, absolve the power brokers, the structure, from any responsibility for the lives that poor people live, regardless of what their racial identity or ethnic identity is. Because in many ways, what he is saying is that if you had only supported your children better, if you had
Mhm.
put them around better people, then they would have turned out better. So ultimately, your misery and your suffering has nothing to do with inferior city services, poor schools, overcrowded schools, being not only unemployed, but maybe underemployed and poorly paid. All those things tie into who we become and what we do.
Mhm.
As you know, we had our gathering at Bolivar Peninsula, and one of the more amazing things to me was I migrate a whole group of new family members, in-laws. And the day after our the wedding ceremony, I'm out on the deck on the second floor, just looking out over the Gulf, and I see, and I've been out there. We've been out there for about a week, and I hadn't seen nothing but white families and their children frolicking, having fun, having a picnic, setting up tents and things like that, riding um, four wheelers and what have you.
Mhm.
But on this day, that Sunday, I go out and I'm just having a moment to myself. And I see this Black collective. There's about 4 or 5 kids and looked like a mother there. Well, it turns out that was my wife's niece and her children. They were out there in the Gulf just frolicking around, and I'm like, had it not been for them being called here to participate in our marriage nuptials, those children may have never ever in their life been able to see the Gulf.
Mm.
Expanding their mind. You talk about the context they're raised in, the socialization, the different points of exposure that they have. It takes money and time to do those things. And when your back is up against the wall continually, you ain't got no time for that, let alone the financial resources to, and let's just call it what it is. A trip like that, you're just blowing that money.
Mhm.
Money that probably could be used to catch you up on your rent. So those things go into it because I think that there's an element of elitism
Mhm.
involved in such analysis that ultimately allows you to make your way back to blaming the poorest Black, red, white, yellow um, aspects of our community,
Mhm.
that it's in some way their fault that they ended up with this, and this idea of the looking glass of self theory. I would ask, what were the larger forces that led to the building of the looking glass, that led to it being the shape that it is, to having when you talk about Black folk, having the little amount of sand that would have to fall through a looking glass before you ended up before your time was up. So I think all those things go into it, brother.
Mhm. And you know, Doc, I look at that as a weapon of war that is used against our people.
Mhm.
Um, and it's like I would say the majority of our people don't even realize that that's a weapon of war. It's like I was watching a video where a black person was being treated bad because of her race, and she put in a complaint about it, you know, to their board or whatever. And I found it funny that they used the word perceived.
Mhm.
She, you know, perceived she was being racially abused, racially misused, racially mistreated, perceived.
Yes.
And I was like, well, why are they
Wh-
using
Which
the
which
word
which which
perceived?
means which means more than likely
Right.
this didn't even happen.
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm like, that thing just stuck in my brain that they
Mhm.
kept using the word perceived.
Mhm.
And I'm like, that's a weapon of war.
Mhm.
When you're dealing, especially when you're dealing in a issue with race and you're dealing with mistreatment, and they keep saying the word perceived, you know, like it's
Mhm.
not really real. She just, you know, making this stuff up. It's not, it really didn't happen. And then people say, well, I'm sorry if you felt that way.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
it's also a because we got to be very very careful in talking about these types of things. It is a dismissive notion that is interjected into conversations by those who feel they have the superior hand. Black folk will do it to other black folk. Have a gripe at the job and have a black supervisor. And this may be a gripe that happens with against other black folk. That happened to me. And the quote unquote superior person to me said, "Well, I didn't know that that was how you perceived what had
mm.
perceived. I was there." Well, you get what I'm saying?
Exactly.
This is participant observation right here. You
Mhm.
going off a second, third, fourth hand reports of people who are, so yeah, it's more than just a racial attack. It's oftentimes can be used as a gender attack,
Mm.
as a means of people who are going to rally together to protect whatever it is they perceive their interest to be. Um,
Mm.
yeah, and that's just what it is. And I think that when you begin to talk about these matters and you kind of take it beyond just the racial
Mhm.
component, it's in many ways the means that opponents address adversaries
Mm.
and seek to advance whatever their agenda is. Because like Chuck D, Public Enemy. Chuck was infamous for saying every brother ain't a brother.
Mhm.
And that's true, and that holds true, not just for black men but also black women,
Mm.
that they have their own agenda, especially when you're talking about organizations and professional associations and what have you. They have their own
Mhm.
agenda of taking over power, and have an entire narrative about, well, people have done this to black women the entire time, and we're not going to stand for it anymore. And before you kind of feel like, was it the Joker who had
Mhm.
the famous quote, "And here we go,"
Mhm.
because you're off to the races. And this is that perceived word. It's used as a bullying tool.
Mhm.
To really, in many ways, push away anything that you say that's contrary to where they're trying to arrive.
Mhm.
Because they've already made their decision. Now they're
Right.
just trying to see if they can mildly, smoothly, suavely get you to see their position. No, I was there. I'm
Mhm.
telling you what happened.
Mhm.
But if you don't have any power behind you, you don't have any allies behind you, you can have the world's greatest argument. They're gonna do what they want to do anyway.
Mhm. Doc, why do you think that it was important for white America to define who Black people were? Starting off with the Birth of a Nation movie depicting who Black people were and then sending that out for the world to see. Why is that such an important thing for them?
It defines reality. Let's be very clear about that. It defines reality, and it not only. This is the weird thing about images and images, television, movies, whatever you consume. People believe what they see, and when you talk about them believing what it is that they see, the idea in dealing with Birth of a Nation, the idea of a character like Gus, who couldn't rest until, and ironically, Gus was, of course, a white actor in blackface, who couldn't rest until he got some of that white woman in it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's a trope that has lasted and dogged Black men forever. That what we ultimately want is a white woman. And you'll hear not only is it a trope that was created for white audience, it's been adopted and integrated in the Black mind. Be very clear. I mean, and you hear that one very frequently when you hear Black women say, well, every time you see a successful Black man, he got a white woman on his arm and blah. That's coming straight from Birth of a Nation. Data doesn't support that. Nothing supports that outside of the fact that instead of thinking about things, you feel about things. And you express verbally in the public arena, you spew it. What your feelings are. And your feelings are not depicting reality at all. And so that's what, you're dealing with psychological warfare and the after effects of that psychological warfare. Because when you really think about the idea of being Black, and I say this from a thinking position, that most Black folk are more American than they are Black. They've adopted the values and priorities of this nation, and many of them would not have a concern at all if Black folk were the ones doing what the people in the White House are doing right now. They would say, well, people, they did it to us, let's do it to us. There's no morality there. There's no God there. That's a problem. That is a major problem. Because ultimately, if you don't check that, you'll eat your own. And we're seeing that on a daily basis. Black folk oftentimes don't even recognize other Black folk. You won't even acknowledge the humanity in other Black folk by acknowledging them as they walk by. Don't acknowledge them unless you need something from them. And I'll tell you one of the personal things for me that gets me every single time. I can walk past 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Black folk, and none of them make eye contact, none of them nod their head, none of them speak or acknowledge me. And that puts me in a position, well, then fuck y'all too. So the next one that I walk by, I'll be damned if I don't speak to them and they're the ones that speak to me.
Wow.
And the idea of even addressing someone with a like history as yours, or the failure to address them, speaks volumes about your mental state. Because you're not even thinking, this is a Black person, let me say hi to him. It should be natural.
Exactly.
It should be instinctual. And the fact that it isn't says so much, and I mean so much, about you. And you really, and it's one of the reasons why for me, although I know that the consequences of race are very real, I become in some ways kind of a divester from racial identity.
Mm,
Because can you have racial identity when you're the only one that recognizes it?
mm. I think you have to, because I go through the same thing at work. You know, when I'm out there, I see all the brothers and sisters, and they walk past, but I'm always speaking to them.
Mhm.
And my thought is that at some point it's going to drop in your brain, because I see them every day out there in the halls. It's every day, I see them. And so I speak. And, eventually I'm starting to see a turn now where they're responding. Now, are they taking that same method and applying it to other Black people who don't speak to them? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. But I think that it's imperative for me to at least begin dropping the seed and
Mhm.
trying to water that seed so that it can grow. Because it's a shame. I really look at it as a shame and a crime to walk past your brother and sister and you don't even see. But as soon as you see Mr. White Man or Miss White Man, white woman, you, how's it doing? How's it doing? You showing all your teeth and smiling and all that. But when
Like
you
they
see
hear
your
like
brother
they
and
like they
sister,
hear music playing in their head. Huh?
exactly. Yes. And that definitely has to change. So, I go out of my way to make sure that I speak, even if they don't even, return it. And one day at work, I realized what it meant, where some Black people have said, white people look like they look through you. They don't even see you, you know. And I never experienced that until I got on this job. And then I'm like, damn, that's what that feel like? Like you're really not even there, that they just don't even see you. And it was a very interesting experience. But that goes for me even the more, that I have to drop that seed into the Black mind, because I think the Black mind is so thoroughly destroyed that
Yeah.
it has to be, rebuilt. We can't even begin to fight the defamation that they throw on us, because our people, they don't even understand what's going on. They're in a lost reality. So this work is a tough work, but it definitely has to begin. And when we look
But
at,
I mean, but see, the thing is that, and this is the frustrating part for me,
mhm,
is let's not talk about it like the work hasn't been going on for 200, 300, 400 years.
mhm,
It has.
mhm,
And so the question that has to be honestly answered, and to use, scripture, had these people been given up when it comes to racial identity? Do they have a reprobate mind in
mm,
regards to even being able to recognize anything beyond what is happening right there in their own personal lives?
mm,
Or are these people who have arrived at a point where they say, well, this is a white man's world and I need to go ahead and cater to them, because rolling with Black folk, even associating with Black folk, is of no material benefit to me?
mm,
And I think it's the latter.
mm,
I really do. I think that it's the latter, because let's be very clear that we have in many ways adopted an American way of viewing even family. We really have.
mm,
And with the way our understanding and views of family have become so skewed with everything, I don't see a way back, to be honest with you. And I think that what we have is that we have a bunch of, when grandma go,
mhm,
we split almost as if we're Voltron.
mhm,
Expand that to a larger thing as far as the community goes. It is without question And when you talk about roots, 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 just because you move from one place to another place does not remove your roots from there.
Mhm.
But we've allowed that to become kind of the standard. And in due time, our children have no roots there because they don't know those people. They have no understanding of who those people are, what they stand for, why they live the way they live, why they view the world the way they view. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, when you're talking about Black folk, everything that's negative is seemingly worse. Seemingly
Mhm.
worse. What can you do with that?
Mhm.
And are you willing? Because there is. Let's be honest. There's a moment. There's a clock that is ticking in regards to our own mortality.
Mhm.
How much time are you willing to give on that clock to banging your head, continuing to bang your head up against the wall in regards to a people who seemingly have not a care about what you're saying or what you're doing? You know, I will always continue to put information out. I will always continue to try to illuminate the minds of Black folk. But if you were to ask me, am I the same place I was now that I was um, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago? I would tell you, no, I'm not. Not because so much of it is combating what I would argue a white-mindedness that comes across Black folk at some point. And that white-mindedness it manifests itself in so many ways. You behave like they do. You think like they do. And it's just what it is. When I was in Ghana during one of my trips, you go so often you begin to notice the small things.
Mhm.
And one of the things I noticed was that the Ghanaian children, because we would give them what they refer to as taffy candy.
Mhm.
Their candy, and it'll blow your mind because you're going to say, well, that ain't candy. Their candy doesn't have sugar in it.
Mm. Oh wow.
Yeah. So can you imagine when they get a hold of some of ours? Yeah. And when we're walking down the street, we would hear when they come up to you, and they're trying to be friendly. These are children, sometimes
Mhm.
as young as 3, 4 years old,
Oh
and
wow.
they'll say, "Oh Bruni, oh Bruni, oh Bruni, oh Bruni." After hearing that word "oh Bruni," because it's twee, I was like, "Man, what in the world does "oh Bruni" mean?" And I had to give a lecture in front of these grad students, and I started it off by asking them, because I'm talking about Pan-Africanism and trying to create stronger connections between Black folk in the West and continental Africans. I said, "What does Obruni mean?" And you could almost hear the air come out of the auditorium.
Mm.
And after prodding them, they eventually said it has two meanings. One is the white man, and the other one is stranger.
Oh
And it
wow.
boils down to we don't know you.
Mhm.
Amongst our own people, except for those who are within our quote unquote nuclear family,
Mhm.
we don't know each other. And
Mhm.
we don't trust each other enough nowadays to give each other the benefit of the doubt
Mhm.
for a lot of reasons. And many of those reasons, when you go back to the theory, what was it? The looking glass of self.
Mhm.
The Boys' insight of it, it is a peculiar sensation to view oneself through the eyes of another. When you see a Black man, do you view him from a position of brother, or do you view him from a position, what I would argue is the default standard position of being a threat to society, a menace to society, as the movie
Mm.
said? So those are all, I think all those things are intertwined, that when you're talking about Black folk and the idea of how we present ourselves, I think all of that matters, and all of that is sort of muddled in together. That here we have a group of individuals who are the personification of Richard Wright's Invisible Man in every way that you could imagine. Not only are we invisible men that people outside of us, they throw outside of our community, they put their stereotypes and caricatures and biases upon us the moment that they see us. And we have to work to disprove those things. Unfortunately, I believe that that has infected the minds of Black folk, Black men, Black women as well. There is, and I'm finding that maybe amongst 80 to 85% of our people, there is no honor. I know brothers who will sleep with your wife and have no problem with it. You know, I had an acquaintance who was in the military, and he took glee that he was sleeping with another soldier's wife, and you know, on top of her in their bed, having sex in front of their marriage picture, their wedding photo. He saw nothing wrong with that until the soldier filed. I guess that's some type of military charge in the military. You ain't supposed to be doing stuff like that. Exactly. Well, when that shoe fell, then he was concerned. And I'm like, so your military status and benefits outweigh your morality. There's something wrong there.
Definitely. And I believe that goes back to what you said, that they're more American than they are Black, because America has no morality.
Yeah.
So therefore they take on that as well. And, you know, I find myself saying this a lot at work, you know, when stuff happens that shouldn't happen, like, that's the American way.
It's the American way. It's the American, you know, you can say whatever you want to about your current president, but the truth of the matter is he's a hell of a reflection of who we are as a people. You just don't want to accept that.
Exactly.
You know, you really don't want to accept it. That we are, that's who we are. Now, you don't want to be on the receiving end of some of the policies that affect people negatively. But if you weren't on the, and this is, come on, we've talked about this ad nauseum. These people supported him because they didn't think it would affect them.
Exactly.
But you in school now. And the thing for me is, and we know this is a playbook, that the week before election, have coverage of a caravan of Guatemalans on their way up here to take all y'all jobs, and they're gonna go right into the privacy of their voting booth, and they're gonna vote against their interests once again.
Definitely. I think that the messaging system in America, when it comes to defining, you know, who we are, who Black people are, they use that very, very well. And they use it so well that a lot of our people who aspire to be something in the sight of white folks, like the senator, what the hell his name is, the Black guy who he was in the running to be vice president, and he was on the stage with
Tim Scott.
Yes, Tim Scott.
Yeah, he's one of my former students. I don't know if he's still in a position or not now. He had told me he would probably be heading on to do some other things, but he handled some aspect of his campaign for him.
And so he was on the stage, and Trump was talking about him, And he was like, I don't know if he's going to be my vice president, but he'll be all right. He'll take it. And then Tim Scott get up there on the mic. Oh, I just want to love you, and it's like, my God, this dumb nigga. Here we go with that bullshit again. You just want to love Trump.
Well, but I mean, let's be honest about this. Who's the most powerful black man in America right now? Who would you say?
I would say it's the Southern representative. What's his old last name? Down in South Carolina. Clyburn, yes.
See, I would say it's Clarence Thomas.
Clarence Thomas?
Yeah.
Why you say? Because he gets the vote with the other white folks on the Supreme Court?
For life. And the question becomes, was he qualified for that position? Not really. Okay. Is he immoral? Certainly. Okay. But he's in that position, and he's in that position for life. And he's able to get revenge upon all black folk who dissed him when he was coming up. And that's what he's doing. Okay. How did he get in there? He got in there by currying favor with white folk. If you watch the PBS documentary on Clarence and Jenny Thomas, his wife, it's absolutely fascinating, to be honest with you. Clarence Thomas, according to those who were interviewed who went to school with him, could recite Malcolm's speeches verbatim. So it ain't due to a lack of exposure. He made a strategic decision at some point that I'm gonna go this way, because the way of going up through the Democratic Party to making it is too many black folk there. So I'm gonna go ahead and be their token, and I'm gonna make it and I'd be doggone if he didn't pull it off. So what Scott was trying to do, he was making a play, and the play is quite simply, I'll be your your huckabuck over here. Yeah. I'll just let me know, what it is that you want me to do. Only problem is that they didn't need him in that way. Now, if the black vote was pivotal, he would have probably gotten it. But you're of no use to them, because he's going to lose more white votes by putting you on than he would gain black votes.
There's so much that can be said on the political side and how we are fed to our enemies and devoured because there's a lack of black love and a lack of wanting to have our own, and I don't believe that there was an elected official on the federal level that really wanted good for black people, absent the congressman from New York, Adam Clayton Powell.
Adam Clayton Powell Jr.
I think
the baddest Negro in America.
Exactly. Once he was out of the picture, we ain't had no stand-up black person. I don't believe.
Yeah, but that flows from the fact of Adam Clayton Powell Jr. never had to worry about being reelected. He never had to worry about any of those types of issues that many people have to worry about, because he was the king of Harlem. Let's just call him exactly what he was, coming out of Abyssinian Baptist Church. Harlemites were going, that's why he was so powerful, because he had been elected so many times. And to show you the power that comes out of that seat, you know who replaced Adam Clayton Powell Jr.? Charlie Rangel. Ain't that something? Think about how long Charlie Rangel was there. So that seat was held by two men for probably 60 years. Okay, so I think that the message out of that, the best message out of Adam Clayton Powell Jr. is what occurs when you have a black constituency that votes for the same individual who actually goes there and does its job. And it's one of the reasons why this entire talk about gerrymandering needs to be taken with the utmost seriousness by Black folk. Because if they could do what they're doing then, what they're doing now, man, please, they would have carved Harlem up. You would have had one little section of Harlem that had their own Congress people, just to nullify the Black vote, the Black political voice.
Now, with that happening, I think down there in your area, where they, from what I understand, I don't know about it.
Keep in mind, I'm not from here.
You know, you're not from there.
I'm behind enemy lines, and they let me know after my Buckeyes black boots stomped Arch Manning in the University of Texas. Had my Ohio State shirt on, headed straight to Kroger's. Okay? People glaring at me. You know, had one brother who was, he said that he went to Penn State. He looked at me, he said, "Woo, brother, you got a lot of nerve." He said, "I'm shocked they ain't shot you." He said, these people are hurt. And I said, "Man, look here, I know they're hurt. I just thought I would step out today and show them what a winner look like." And he said, "I'm getting ready to go down this aisle. You go down that aisle over there."
Okay? So with that though, were they successfully able to remove Crockett from her spot that she had?
They haven't removed her, but next election, her position, her district is going to be markedly changed. Yeah, they did it. Yeah, there's no, they were going to do this. There's no doubt that they were going to do it. And it would be, that is quite possibly the greatest example for what I was just alluding to about how difficult it would be for an Adam Clayton Powell Jr. today. And the hard part of it for Democrats to really understand at this present moment, apparently, is quite simply that you're dealing with an immoral enemy. So why are you concerned with rules? The new mantra of the Republican Party, and I've said this for 20 years, is the old Oakland Raiders mantra. Al Davis said, "If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying." That's who your opponent is. Make no mistake about it.
Now, this redistricting was done on the state level, right?
Yes.
Those were the people who decided to do it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, they are determined to extend their rule one way or another. It's all tied together, all the way down to the idea of the inability to have a reasonable conversation about immigration reform. They don't want these people in here voting. Not in a nation that talks about one man, one vote. It's just what it is. I mean, it takes us back to the rise of the Second Klan in the post-World War I period. They of course they didn't like black folk, but their foremost target were the new immigrants. You know, if you read the book How the Irish Became White, they forced those folks to become white. You know, when was the last time you saw an Irishman? Not never, because they're white now. Political power, political solidarity. We will dominate the political arena. We will gather all the resources, and then we will fight amongst ourselves for who gets what.
All right. We're going to take a look at another video and look at these images and see, how do these images become who we are?
Greatest hood movies. Man Them Talk Movies presents the top 10 greatest hood movies of all time.
In at number 10, Set It Off.
Number 9, In Too Deep.
Number 8, Dead Presidents.
Number 7, Above the Rim.
Number 6, Juice.
Number 5, Paid in Full.
Number 4, New Jersey Drive.
Number 3, New Jack City.
Number 2, Menace to Society.
And number 1, Boys in the Hood.
Like, subscribe, and follow for more.
Okay, so they just ran down the top 10 movies. All them movies have a similar theme about Black people. Robbing, stealing, killing, gangsters, thug life. That's the message that those films go out. At a certain point, Doc, our people believe in those messages. They believe in those stereotypes, as you discussed before with the one of your students had a car, just like I think Old Dog had a car like.
Dude from my neighborhood. Yeah.
Right, from your neighborhood.
Yeah. Kane, he had a green 5.0 like Kane had, sitting on Dayton's, playing Computer Love all summer long.
So with these images, our people fall in love with these images and want to become these images. Not all of Black people, but a majority number of Black people wants to become what they see on screen, the thug life, this, that, and the other. Even though it has a short shelf life, they will choose that versus choosing something else with a longer shelf life. Why do you think that is? That they would chase a life that they know has no long-term, no longevity to it?
I don't think that people look at it that way. They're not looking at it from a elongated way. You know, how often have we heard the idea that being in the drug game or the fast life is going to either lead you to the penitentiary or the grave? That's a common saying. We all know that. But I think there are a lot of things that are going on. I think that we are born in sin. I know that we are born in sin and we gravitate towards sin. And let's once again be very clear on what we're talking about. We're talking about Americans. And you can't tease out and say, well, just Black folk are. America loves its gangsters. Al Capone, Lucky Luciano, the list can go on and on. John Gotti, Frank Lucas, okay, Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson. We love gangsters. We love violence as a nation. And personally, you might be shocked to hear me say it, I don't see anything wrong with those types of movies. What's wrong is that that's the only image that's put out there. And what often happens is that, and I'm just a proponent that Hollywood doesn't have a conspiracy thing to malign the Black character. Okay. Hollywood is about money. And if you produce a film, and let's look at one of the classics that was put up there, Menace to Society with Tate,
Right.
Lorenz Tate, okay, Old Dog. Okay, when I talk about this type of thing, I always get male students who are like, oh yeah, this class, yeah, Old Dog, yeah, blah blah blah, Old Dog, Old Dog, Old Dog. Okay, he's a sociopath. And you identify with it, okay? But what about Love Jones? Same actor playing a brother who writes poetry.
Right.
Nobody, they don't gravitate to that. And it's not accidental that you've seen many more Menace to Societies and very few Love Jones movies. So you have to really put them within their proper context of being Americans, of being born in a violent nation, a nation that was birthed out of violence, a nation whose leaders on a daily basis display that this is what power and manhood is, violence. I'm going to force you to do. If I told you that you ain't supposed to be here, damn the rules. We coming to get you. Those aren't messages that are just being had from Set It Off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and when you look at a film, and it's in many ways kind of offensive and definitely troubling to me that he has one of my favorite movies listed there, and that's Dead Presidents.
Mm.
Dead Presidents is a brilliant expose and treatise about what happens to Black folk who serve this nation
Mm-hmm.
and come back and have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? Well, watch Dead Presidents and it'll show you. And then the fact that if you try to access the very funds that you went ahead and fought for, what's going to happen to you?
Mm-hmm.
Because that ain't going well for you, Playboy. They're not playing about their money. Even though you went over there and risked your life and you can't sleep through a night anymore. You got emotional issues, you got PTSD, and nobody really cares. That's what Dead Presidents is about. Now, if you allow the violence to blind you to that message, well, then you got an intellectual problem. You got an inability to think. It takes me back to Lauryn Hill from the Fugees in one of her songs, and she's making this very subtle commentary about how unless it's vulgar, unless it's socially inappropriate, that Black folk don't listen to it. El Boogie said, and I add a motherfucker so you stupid niggas hear me.
Mm.
Is that the key to getting our attention? I remember standing outside waiting to go into a Big Crit concert and listening to a young brother who every single statement that he made, every one now, started with nigga, and then ba 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 ba, nigga, blah blah blah. And I turned, I said, yo, I said, can I ask you something, man? He said, yeah, yes, sir. I said, is nigga the word you got to say before you can form a sentence? And he just looked at me like, damn. And it from my perspective, that was a legitimate question. Because every single statement that you made began with the word nigga. Every single one. And it's just really what it is. After a certain point, you just have to say, well, these are people who, for whatever reason, have decided that this is going to be how they present themselves. They don't know where it comes from. They just understand that this is how Black folk talk. This is how Black folk act. You know, and I've spoken a bunch of times about having students who are from the suburbs, and they've made the decision to kind of reinvent themselves. And what they reinvented themselves as is a monstrosity of Black life. You know, so they're gonna be gangbangers. They gonna they cripping, they blood, and they doing whatever you can imagine. And all of it, from the beginning to the end, is a damn lie. That ain't who you are. You ain't never been a Hoover Crip. You ain't, Ice Cube's My Summer Vacation spells it out perfectly. He says they dying for a street that they never heard of. And that's what it comes down to. So for me, I just look at them as if they're people who are less developed than humans should be allowed to be developed. But the idea of those films impacting our people, that's a very real thing. The best art, if we're talking honestly, the best art, the art that should be celebrated, is art that depicts life. It's just what it is. But I think that what we saw happen somewhere along the way was that life began to mimic and depict art. And unfortunately for our community, the life that was being depicted was something that was thought up in some A&R's office about what they would like to see a character do. What type of, there was always the rumor that every rap label had to have a hood rapper. I believe that that was very real. That they set out and they basically said, yeah, well, we need, somebody from the street, somebody that can keep it real, this and that, yeah. And they went out and they manufactured that.
Mm-hmm. So, Doc, when you're teaching Black Power and labor, can you share historical examples where the Black communities successfully built their own economic and social infrastructure, and what lessons can we learn? But we done talked about Tulsa so much. I'm quite sure there has to be more than just Tulsa.
Greenwood. Oh my God, yeah, brother. We didn't beat that into the ground, ain't we? The thing that you have to really think about when you're talking about the idea of Black Power.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily, when we're talking about Black Power, we're talking about a political moment that begins in the early 1960s and begins in the early 1970s. The reason Black Power came into being, and this is why answering that question and holding it within the Black Power era is so difficult to respond to in a encouraging, positive way, is that the reason for the rise of Black Power was Black urban poverty, of being left out of jobs, being left out of educational opportunities, and things like that. That in many ways is a sign for how much Black folk were struggling economically. So there really isn't, not on a large scale, I personally don't know of any. You may have some neighborhoods, like you may have a neighborhood in Detroit, you may have, an area in Cleveland where Black folk were able to develop some businesses and circulate their dollars. But anything that would rival what we saw in the early part of the American century, talking about, once again, Greenwood, talking about Rosewood, places like that. No, not during the Black Power era. The Black Power era was seeking to guide us towards the achievement of that. The Civil Rights Movement had failed to secure and deliver tangible gains. It got voting rights and brought attention to the problem. But as far as tangible gains, meaning homes, jobs, economic opportunity, it's what drives Dr. King to Chicago to try and tackle the Windy City, where he got his ass kicked by Mayor Daley. Okay, so no, there really aren't any. You have these collectives and things like that you'll see groups like the Panthers doing, where they're handing out free breakfast, free groceries, and what have you. But that's a drop in the bucket in regards to counterbalancing and counteracting the misery and pain that Black folk have gone through and had to experience. So that's not a, nothing that's widespread. And you have to remember that even during the Black Power era, our idea, and this takes us back to something you were talking about earlier, the idea that there is a consensus in thought in regards to even the goals of liberation. I can't even take that for granted, because Black Power in and of itself is, number one, not really defined until, Stokely Carmichael and Charles V. Hamilton tried to define it in their brilliant book, Black Power. But here you have revolutionary nationalists like the Panthers, who are trying to disrupt, if not overthrow, the existing system. And you have Black folk who have been allowed to integrate predominantly white institutions by the mid-60s. By the time they come out in the early to mid-70s, they have adopted the priorities and the goals of the white folk who taught them. So instead of going back to Black neighborhoods to work, to build up the neighborhood, no, they're going to IBM. They're integrating Fortune 500 companies. I think it was either Time or Newsweek who ran this great cover in the cover, it speaks volumes. And this is the early to mid 1970s. It was three brothers who were on the cover, and the title was "The New Black Power," and they were talking about black folk going into white corporations and working their way up to VP status or president status. So the idea of circulating, and I write about this in one of my Floyd stories, the idea of black folk uplifting themselves and circulating the dollar is a basic wonderful idea that takes a whole lot of things for granted. You know, Floyd talks about having a situation where he said the reason that he doesn't go and support the black store is because the Arab store, they treat him with dignity there, they treat him better, and their prices are 10 to 15 cent cheaper than the black store. And he says, and plus I know that, and you know, and for those who want to support me, buy a copy of Foolish Floyd, The Life and Times of an African-American Contrarian. But what Floyd says is, I know that fool that owns the black store. And I know for sure that when he closes his doors and he grabs that money out of there, he takes it into a white neighborhood, puts it in a white bank where he lives in his house with his white wife. So there's a lot of things that go into the idea of building a black community. And the fact that black folk are much more extreme in their viciousness than they are in their ability to help each other tells the entire story of why we haven't been able to overcome, not in a material way that benefits the masses.
Well, let's look at another phase then. Sweet Daddy Grace.
Oh, I mentioned Daddy Grace and Father Divine, just as sort of a quip, you know, to a student. Yeah, combusted on a Philadelphia sidewalk.
So, Sweet Daddy Grace, Father Divine, they built for their congregants. Would you call what they did a model that can be duplicated?
Duplicated on what scale?
On a national scale for black people. No. Can't be duplicated on a national scale for black folk for the following reason, that black pastors in many ways are kind of like African presidents, and Kwame Nkrumah dealt with this. And Nkrumah told African leaders, you're not strong enough to stand on your own against European and also Asian people who are going to raid the continent for his resources. And he was absolutely correct. He called for a working together and the creation of, get this, the United States of Africa. African leaders would not follow behind it. They said, yeah, Nkrumah wants a United States of Africa, but he wants to be the president. You know that's gonna happen with black pastors. Ain't nobody trying to give up their congregation for a larger cause. So no, I don't see that as the only way I could see black folk really falling in line behind that, and this may provide some element of hope for what it is you're talking about, is if they got involved in a cult and they just followed that leader without thinking about anything. But as soon as black folk begin to think about the fact that this is a black man who is saying these things and trying to get all these resources together, they are more than likely going to turn on him. It's the element of doubt and skepticism that black folk have for other black folk, whether good or bad. So what were the positive things that you could contribute or that you can point out about Sweet Daddy and Father Divine?
Well, it's always the exact same things of collectivism, cohesiveness, brotherhood, sisterhood, belief in a larger cause, the ability and willingness to self-sacrifice one's own creature comforts right now for a larger good that will extend beyond their grave. You're talking about having a eternal life, working with an organization and building something that is going to be rock solid and in existence after you enter the grave. That's eternal life. Yeah, those are great, admirable things that you just wish could be replicated and applied on a national level to a. You would really hope that it could be applied to a nation. You know, it takes us back to the old Communist Party USA mantra of from each according to his own abilities and to each according to his own needs. That's the sweet spot of life. That's what we should be aiming for. So those things are brilliant. They are great. And what comes along with this, if you really think about it, and it's one of the things that revolves around much of what it is that we talk about, is quite simply the idea of educating your own and putting your own people on the same intellectual diet. You just hope that that intellectual diet would be more Minister Farrakhan and less Jim Jones in the Guyana tragedy, because that's a hell of a lot of power to give to one man. And if that one man, you know, the saying of absolute power corrupts absolutely. If that one man is not righteous, y'all gonna be in trouble. A trouble that in many ways, I don't think that anyone but God can intercede and get you out of.
Exactly. We're going to look at two quick videos and then come back and discuss some more about them. Okay.
When the people began to see Muslim businesses popping up all over the city, the Black community wanted to hear more of what the Nation of Islam was all about, because they loved the idea of doing for self. This was never more evident than when 50 local businesses joined with the Muslim community at the Shrine Auditorium for the Black Business Bazaar.
You're here because you have a booth at the bazaar, correct?
Ma'am. And also support the Messenger Muhammad program.
How do you feel about the fact that the Black community and Black businesses are coming together in a unified effort?
Well, I feel that this is a result of Messenger Muhammad's teachings. I myself was once, like many of my brothers and sisters, who just came to see and be with Black people. And of course, I heard the teachings and I wanted to progress and get even better. So I look at the whole situation as a result of the teachings of Messenger Muhammad.
With me here is a brother who is a hero of our time. He has survived one of the vicious attacks by the police department some years ago. Brother William, how are you, brother?
Oh, fine.
Why are you here today at the Black Business Bazaar?
Well, I'm here because I do have a business in the Black community, and the Black community supports me. So I'm here to support anything that the Black businessmen have in the Los Angeles area. Because many of our people here in the community are not even aware of the businesses that's in their community. But today, being at this bazaar, gave them a chance to see how many Black businesses there really is in the community.
My job is to go around and see to it that everybody has all the things which they need, everybody's comfortable, and, you know, more or less make sure everybody's relaxed and everybody's enjoying themselves.
What do you think about today's event?
I think it was dynamic. I think it's one of the biggest Black events.
Whiting H&G, the Nation of Islam grossed over $18 million a year. But such a massive business venture did not come without challenges.
We unloaded 7 ships in the LA harbor.
We unloaded 7 ships ourselves in the LA harbor. We came out on the docks to help. They said we were not union. And that was a union dock. So what the union people did, since we came out there, they said, well, we'll close down the docks. We won't do nothing.
And we weren't going to allow nothing or nobody to stop us. So they said that they wouldn't unload it, period. We had 20 trucks. We had our own men. We had 240 men. And the captain said, look, we'll take care of it ourselves.
And he called them all to attention. And he told them what had to be done.
And they say, well, look, you can't do that. This is a union dock. If we don't unload it, it won't be unloaded.
Those brothers pulled off their coats after the longshoremen left and sat down. Their brothers pulled off their coats. They went inside the warehouse.
And a couple of the brothers knew how to operate cranes. Brother jumped on the crane. In fact, it was a Lieutenant Rayford. I know, a little bitty brother, man. He was small in size, but his heart was big as the ocean, man. He was a fiery young soldier.
And they started running that little tow motor.
He operated and swung that big lift around, and brother began to stack it on. Just stack the fish on top of that bed.
And started sending the fish down on the conveyor belt. We had our own trucks come in.
Over 200,000 pounds on that first shipment, if I'm not mistaken. We unloaded it off the dock and started putting it on the truck. Shop stewardess came out and told us, say, now listen, the union is going to send some people over here to let you know that, you know, you're not supposed to be doing this. So the captain said, man, don't worry about none of that. You do what you got to do. We're going to do what we got to do. We're not going to let our fish rot just because we are not in the union. The guy said, who's in charge? As soon as he said that, man, we stopped and the captain stepped straight to the point. Captain Ali Rashid was so cold. I remember he had a black outfit, and the captain said, I'm in charge, man. And the guy told the captain, said, well, look, you know, you're in violation here. You can't do this. And the captain said, in violation of who and then of what? Who am I violating? Well, this is a union dock, and the union has to do this. You can't do it. The captain said, look, man, look at me. The captain said, these are our fish. These are our men. Allah's God, so what you want to do? 200 men, everybody was ready to do whatever we was going to tear that dock up. And the man said, look, I ain't got nothing to do with his fish. I sure ain't got nothing to do with God, with Allah, so y'all handle your business. The captain said, you a smart boy. Here, take a piece of fish. Gave him a 5-pound box of fish, and we finished the work. And, you know, that was it.
All right.
I love it, but you know.
Okay. So, Doc, there we had showed 2 videos of the Nation of Islam doing their businesses and also with the fish, and you see what happened with the union. The Nation of Islam is a very, I would say, is a very good example. But of course, I may be a little bit biased. But do you think that the Nation of Islam is a good example to have in front of our people, to show our people this is a way, not necessarily telling them that you all have to go out and be Muslims, but that you work the principles. And by working the principles, you will change the projection or the projection of your family and your community. Your thoughts?
Certainly. Yeah, I mean, it's always been that way. That it is one of the most sterling examples that our people could ever have, where you're talking about economic independence, a movement towards economic independence. You're talking about collectivism, the very same things that I was talking about when I talked about Daddy Grace and Father Divine.
Mm-hmm.
These are sort of laws. You know, we can use that term. These are laws of how you live life. These are building blocks of building not just Black folk, but every other group. You know, you can be quite sure that these longshoremen who are refusing to work, that they are all of one or two racial identities
Mhm.
or ethnic identities.
Mhm.
And this takes me back again to the idea of you principally only have a couple paths when you're dealing with these types of opponents. One of them is to get down in the mud with them and give their system legitimacy by saying, okay, well, what's the paperwork for us to go ahead and be able to operate? But they're gonna bog you down with so much paperwork and what have you that you're never gonna get that figured out. Let's just be honest about that. The other way that you can look at this is exactly with how the nation looked at it, which is this is our fish. We're not going to let it sit here and rot while y'all sit around here and laugh about it as if we're scared of it. Because in many ways, what you're talking about, and this is one of the things that I'm quite sure I remember correctly, although I've never been in the military, and I believe that you talked about this, that there are some orders that are considered immoral, and you're not forced to honor those immoral laws. So immoral law does not have to be adhered to, but understand that there are going to be some consequences of violating those immoral laws, because you're dealing with people who have set up a structure and a system that they have mechanisms for whatever reason that will make you disappear for 15, 20 years. And the reason they have those mechanisms is because our people have refused to engage them in every arena. Good people have to fight like dogs against bad people with more determination and more commitment. And that's just what it is. We have to get to a point, and we talk about it being an example for Black folk. We need to fight them in the voting booth. We need to fight them at city council, at the school board. Everywhere they turn, they need to experience some form of organized resistance.
Mhm.
And that organized resistance can come in several different ways. Some of it can be legitimate above board, and some of it can be, catch you when you go to your car and beat you to hell with a bat.
Mhm.
That's when you want to win. When you're serious about winning, go ahead and adopt some of those techniques and see where they take you. Otherwise, you're going to fight against an enemy who we all know is the height of immoral. They don't care anything about what's right and wrong. They just care about winning. And if holding you back allows them to win, that's what they're going to do.
Exactly. Now, we did have a question, I think about 2 weeks ago, because you used the term manufacturing consent. And all of our normal listeners, they already know exactly what you mean when you said that. But one of the questions that they had was for you to break it down, and for me to, when you use words like that I should follow up by asking you what it already means. But this is a new person that was come to the channel to see.
Well, welcome, new person who's come to the channel. Thank you for the question and what have you. When you're talking about the idea and the concept of manufacturing consent, I would simply ask you, why do you believe what it is that you believe? And people believe based upon what they've read, they've heard, they viewed, that they comprehend and understand. Okay, your beliefs and your ideas are not just coming out of your brain from someplace. So the idea of manufacturing consent is really what you saw with the Nation of Islam out there on that dock. That's what manufacturing consent looks like. They all read the same thing. They all study the same thing. They all listen to the dear Minister Louis Farrakhan. That's their North Star. So what do you think is going to come out? It's one of the inside jokes that people have about my Muslim brothers. And I was asked this by my best friend. He said, "Hey man, let me ask you this." He said, "They go to some type of school or something to be able to talk like that? Because they all sound the same. They all kind of use the same cadence." And I'm like, I said, that's because they've all been sort of trained the same way. They read the same things, they listen to the same. It's not that they don't have their own mind, but their worldview is going to be the same way. That's manufacturing consent. It's the same thing that you'll see with Notre Dame. Notre Dame is not going to allow in their curriculum to have things in there that are contrary to Catholicism. You're not going to get a class talking about reproductive rights of women at the University of Notre Dame. You're just not. Okay. You're not going to get a class at a yeshiva aimed at divesting from Israel. They're not going to have those types of things. Okay. So when you're talking about the idea of manufacturing consent, let's have someone read these 20 books, and we're going to guide them through these books. Let's have someone read, someone listen to these 100 speeches, and we're going to have, what do they call it? They're like study groups that break down what was said and why it was said and what's the historical context and how that affects our group and why we should believe in that. If you go under that for any significant period of time, you'll find that your worldview and your ideas and your understanding begin to mimic those that are teaching you. You just have to hope that it's righteous teaching for the good of Black folk. So that's what manufacturing consent is. And it can be used positively, it can be used negatively. One of my biggest criticisms that I have about as a historian that teaches about Black folk is, why is it that when my students arrive to me, 98% of them have read the Diary of Anne Frank? And maybe 2 out of 100, maybe 2%, they've read the Diary of Anne Frank, but they also have read Asada. And the reason for that is the high school curriculum that was handed out to them. And if you go to Barnes and Noble during the summer, you'll see that summer reading list. There are 4 or 5 books on there. The autobiography of Frederick Douglass, Malcolm's book is on there sometime. Up From Slavery is on there. So you're being controlled and your mind is being molded by what it is you read. And in defense of our people, we don't know what we don't know. And because you don't know, you can have access to all the information in the world. It's of no use to you because you don't know where to go look. And so we wind up silly-minded, looking at things about like the gender wars, Umar Johnson, all this salacious BS. What really, when you really look at it, it's nothing other than mental masturbation. People are busying their minds thinking that they're actually talking about something or achieving something. It feels good to them, but from the beginning to the end, there was no chance that you would ever produce anything worthy of life. So that would be manufacturing consent. I hope that answers it. And if it don't, send us a note.
Definitely. And Doc, can you just go into what is the Diary of Anne Frank? What is that?
You ain't never read the Diary of Anne Frank?
Of course, I read it, but they told me I need to follow up and ask you questions when you say stuff.
I know you wasn't a Panther or nothing like that. I'm like, hold on. The Diary of Anne Frank is a book written by Anne Frank about her family's escape to Amsterdam from the Nazis during World War II. And she was hidden in like a attic or a closet or something like that. When I went to Amsterdam, I had a layover. I went over there and I saw where it was at and what have you. But my thing is that which one has more applicability to it? Hell, I'd rather they read The Color Purple than the Diary of Anne Frank. Third Life of Grange Copeland. There's so many better books that depict the Black life. So here you have Black children who know nothing about themselves, who know nothing about themselves at all, who are reading about a story about a Jewish girl hiding from some Germans in Amsterdam, and they can't tell you the difference between they can't tell you who wrote The Invisible Man. You know, I assigned The Invisible Man in my class, and many of my students, I'd say I put the number at 20%. They bring it to class and ask me, "Is this the right book?" And it's The Invisible Man, the see-through, colorless guy. Okay, not Ellison's The Invisible Man. You know, and I just have to shake my head and correct them and try to not make a you know, commentary about it.
Definitely. And so, Doc, when we're looking at that, and you know, it's like there's a war on truth. What is the connection, if there's a connection, on the restriction of teaching our real history to economics and social control? Is there a connection between that?
Well, certainly. I mean, those who, you know, he who has the gold makes the rules. That's the golden rule. So there's certainly a connection between the profits and the viability and the preference of having Black folk out here completely scatterbrained and not knowing up from down. You know, sort of the Richard Pryor film, Which Way Is Up? That's often what the Black life seems to look like. You know, which way is up? Which way should we go? Well, we don't know. And the people who are unfortunately put in charge of teaching our people which way they should go, left or right, up or down, east or west, north or south, they benefit from our being scatterbrained in a host of different ways. They're the ones who are employed by a non-representative school district. They're the ones who are setting the curriculum that basically says, now, a educated person in our society knows these facts. And the majority of these facts, if they do have anything to deal with Black folk, they are certainly not aimed at uplifting Black folk out of the depraved intellectual state that we find ourselves in so frequently. But no one within Black America really has the power or the wherewithal to counterbalance that on a major level. It's one of the reasons why the Umar Johnson situation is so disastrous for our people, because quite simply, we need our own independent educational institutions, number one. But number two, that brother siphoned off millions of dollars probably, okay, that could have been poured into pre-existing Black educational institutions, independent Black schools that are already doing the work that he professed that he would do with was it Frederick Douglass, Marcus Garvey, you know, such and such. Right. So yeah, we need to, in many ways, be able to dictate, and we're the only ones who even have to have this conversation, because like, you know, I've made this joke previously. Do you think that Notre Dame or a whatever the mainstay school in Israel is, and really you could extend this to any nation that is not headed by Black folk or majority Black, do you think they would allow me, Brother Khaled, Minister Farrakhan, Brother Maurice, to come over there and set their reading list for their children? That by the age of 2 or 3, they should have read this. By the age of 4 and 5, they should be reading this. Then they should be reading. They would never allow that. And many Black folk, when they hear it explained that way, they laugh. Of course, they wouldn't do that, blah, blah. So why do you allow it for yours? Are your children lesser? Did God make them with did he put a governor on their intellectual capabilities? And do you care enough about yours like other people care about theirs?
Mhm. Mm, mm, mm. That is. Doc, do you feel that our people understand that they do have power to say what is done in their school systems?
Nope, not at all. Where would they learn that at? From the very people who they should be fighting and resisting? That doesn't make sense. That I'm going to teach you how to oppose me and to throw me out of the position that I'm in that's paying me so well. Okay. I'm not going to teach you that. I'm not going to make you aware of that. Understanding the system of how institutions work is one of our major flaws. We like to wait until after the decision has been made. They rubber stamped it, they signed it in that blue ink and what have you. Then we show up screaming and hollering about something. No. You should have been screaming and hollering when you voted them off of that school board. You should have been screaming and hollering way before. You'll never see someone approach a white section of the city. And I would challenge somebody to do this. Go ahead and try and create an ordinance, put some legislation forward that curtails the rights and the privileges of white folk in a suburban area, and see how that go for you. You may very well be arrested for a new criminal offense. They charge you with a felony for being ridiculous. You ain't getting that off over here. If these town hall meetings have not shown people anything else, they should have shown you that white folk do not suffer in silence. Not at all. So why do you choose to suffer in silence? And one of the things I can tell you for sure that I know about my people is that far too often we do not complain publicly. We talk to each other behind closed doors.
Exactly.
And like Malcolm said, you make it hard on yourself when you go around that man with all that sweet talk. Go up there and tell that man how you feel. But how many people honestly are willing to do that, are courageous enough to do that? Not many.
Yeah.
And the few who do it, they understand that they're standing alone.
Exactly. So, Doc, beyond our personal awareness, how can we as a collective begin to dismantle and replace the distorted reflection of Black images? How do we do that?
On a mass basis, start producing your own films. Start writing your own stories. One of my friends, John Calhoun, he says that Ishmael Reed told him, said, you have to remember that a people are no healthier than their stories. Think about the stories that we consume. You put up the quote unquote hood stories earlier. That's fine if that's because we do know that there is some truth and some validity. Some people, that is their story, but that ain't the totality of the Black experience. For every Boys in the Hood, we need an inkwell. We need for our people to understand who Oscar Michaud is. We need to, in many ways, kind of divest from this inundation of Tyler Perry films. Although I will admit that they have their place and their role in serving almost as a comedic release valve for the pressures that come with Black life. But they can by no means are they to be the only means of Black folk being depicted on screen. And to do that means that a big part of us is not being reflected in life.
And Doc, let me ask you this: since we are talking about Tyler Perry,
oh,
when we look at the aspect of him wearing the dress, is that something that should be focused on, or is it more important to talk about the meaning of what he's doing? What's your take on that?
I think that you have to look at that, brother, and look at the development of the Medea character, and understand that the brother failed initially. He just, no one showed up, and he tells this story of renting out a theater and putting on this play, which is, in many ways, I tip my hat to that brother for being courageous enough to do something like that. No one came. He said he didn't sell a single ticket. Nobody came. Think about how discouraging that would have to be, and that you're living in your car, and the people who know what you did, like, hey, look at this fool right here.
Right.
Okay. The Medea character, in many ways, made him a international name, which tells us quite a few things about the consumption of images and what our people gravitate towards. Just as we have many people who find it morally repugnant especially for a Black man to put on a dress and to go on a stage and cut a fool, there appears to be 10,000 times more Black folk who don't have a problem with it. They find it hilarious. And the inability to analyze these images, to understand what that means, is in many ways a reflection of a poor educational system. Many of our people don't have the analytical skills to analyze what's occurring around them, or even what's occurring in their own lives. And for that, we are marginalized, and we are in many ways in a worse position than we should be.
Wow. Very interesting, very interesting. I know Minister Farrakhan had called Tyler Perry a spiritual giant, and a lot of, especially, what's his name, Irritated Genie, his crew.
I remember that, brother.
And so there was a debate on his program. It was me debating one of his members, and on that topic. And in the middle of the debate, the dude was, after I explained it, he was like, "Well, okay, yeah, I can see it. I can, if you I can see it." And I was like, "What? Wait a minute, you
this ain't supposed to go like this, brother. It's too soon for you to concede."
Exactly. Yeah, I tell you, that was funny as all get out. But yeah, hip hop music is the, I don't know if I'm gonna say the greatest. No, I'm not gonna say. I was gonna say hip hop music is one of the greatest purveyor of filth and debauchery.
I thought you was talking about hip hop music being the greatest music form we ever had. I would give that to jazz, but okay.
But is there a way that we could turn that ship around? The way in the direction that is going in right now is not a very good direction. Is there a way that from the grassroots we could turn that ship around to make it go?
I don't think that hip hop is going in a bad direction. Let me say that. And that's recognizing Sexy Red, Suki Hana, and God knows who else. I think that because at the same time that we have them, and it's the exact same thing that happened during our day. At the same time that we had Public Enemy, we had Luther Campbell, Uncle Luke, you know what I'm saying, and the 2 Live Crew. So there's always been room for lyrical diversity, topical diversity. The problem that we have is quite simply that much of what, and it's interesting that you use you refer to the grassroots. What we have is quite simply that so much of the hip hop that is being shared on the major radio waves is handpicked and selected and paid for by record companies and record executives for it to be played. This isn't a popularity contest. This is about money. Okay, so we're going to pay you this much money so that you'll play this record. So I think that if you're engaging a culture from a curated culture, a curated playlist that in no way reflects the true identity of the entire culture, you're on shaky ground right there. It's sort of like with jazz. As I've gotten older, I'm 55 now. I've learned to appreciate jazz much more than I ever would have imagined I'd do. Okay. If I listened to what people said was great in jazz, and this is one of my, if we ever meet and you trying to talk to me, I can tell you what to say to me to make me give you my sign off phrase. And my sign off phrase is right on, right on. If you hear me say right on, I'm done. I'm walking away. We don't need to talk about nothing else. If we're talking about jazz and you say to me, yeah, because that brother Kenny G, oh, he be bringing it right on, right on. And if you go back and you listen to like Songbird and all of that, when Kenny G had the Jerry curl going on and what have you, if you listen to the radio then, you would swear that Kenny G was the man. You wouldn't have heard Miles Davis. You didn't hear Coltrane. You didn't hear McCoy Tyner. You didn't hear Art Blakey and his wizardry of artists. You heard Kenny Stankin' G. Okay. Now I ain't say nothing about Boney James. Okay, and Boney James jams. Now I didn't believe Boney James was white till I saw a picture of him. And there's a part of me that still believes there's a black man in the back playing for Boney James. Okay. But when you look at hip hop and you're just consuming what is on the radio, you're not going to hear Big Crit. You're not going to hear when I miss my mother and I miss my grandmother, two of the women that are, on my wall behind me, I listen to Big Crit's song, I Gotta Stay. I Gotta Stay has probably never been played on the radio. And you would never hear it unless you knew Crit's music. So at the same time that we have a righteous lane, a wide lane to denounce hip hop, there's some off the beaten path messages of hip hop that are worthy of listening to and should be the things that are on our people's minds. I personally believe that a group like Outkast, Big Boy and Andre 3000, if they came out today, they would have never made it on the radio. You would just look at, oh man, that's weird. That's the weird cats. They wouldn't have made it on the radio. They wouldn't have had the commercial success that they have if they came out today, because corporate America decides what's going to be played and what's not going to be played. And it's gotten to the point now where I don't even listen to the radio. I listen to Pandora, where I can type in what it is I want to listen to and give me songs like this.
Exactly. Exactly. I want to show this last video. And again, it's still on the same music subject. I want to show this last video and come back and talk about it.
Okay.
I got a jelly roll, sweet as it can be. When the fellas come round, they all jump on me. They walk a country mile to do me doggy style. Preacher man always yelling about sin. He come round at night trying to stick it in. He walks a country mile to do me doggy style. Doggy style. My ass up in the air, doggy style, till the cream is dripping everywhere. My garter's on tight and my skirt up high. Shake this ass and make a dead man cry. They walk a country mile to do me doggy style. Some like my mouth, some like my titties, but most wanna pound that sweet pink kitty. But missionary just ain't my style. They get me on the bed or on the floor, bang me till I can't take it no more. They walk a country mile to do me doggy style. They all walk a country mile to do me doggy style.
Now, when I first came across that song, I was like, what in the hell? And you know, that was a hit song back in the 40s. They walk a country mile to do that black woman doggy style.
Yeah.
I would have never imagined.
Why? Why? I mean, think about the blues tradition. Think, you know, and that's I call it generational warfare. That we attack generations that come after us for what they're doing, and we amazingly forget where we've been. You know, and that's sort of like when people talk about contemporary music and they're like, well, you know, they back in the 80s and 90s, we had Public Enemy and Brand Nubian. Very true. At the same time now, we had Luke dances, you know, and Luke, hey, we want some pussy. That was the chant, that was the chorus. You know, who was it? You know, I was earning my man while I was learning my man, Betty Wright. You know, he's got papers on me. All of those, that's part of the black tradition of music. Okay. Short Dog. Okay. Come on now. There's no, you know, go back and listen to Ice Cube. You know, the stuff that he did with Yo-Yo. You know. Same vein. The problem is, though, this is the problem. We're not at the grassroots level so often. At a certain age, you're no longer on the cutting edge of what's being released because life is happening to you. You got to go to a job. Okay. And how many people know who Chris Brown is? Young folk will throw their hands up. How many know who Clifford Brown is? They would have no idea who Clifford Brown is. Okay. Jazz trumpeter, probably the greatest jazz trumpeter of all time. Okay. I put him up there beyond even Miles. Okay. However, this is part of the black tradition. And there is and there has always been, and hopefully that we can get back to this point where there is a cordoning off of accessibility to that type of music. It's something that you listen to at the juke joint. You don't play that for children during the day. Okay. We've lost that sense of decency. the ability to delay the carnal side of adulthood for the sake of the innocence of children being preserved. That song there, shit, send that to Cardi B and see if they don't make that a hit.
Well, I definitely was shocked about that. I'm like, wow, this is a pretty black woman, and this is what she got coming out of her mouth. Back then in the 40s, I wouldn't have expected nothing like that.
What are the options for creating a viable career? You know, it takes me back to Butterfly McQueen in Going with the Wind. When she got criticized for being a maid, she said, I'd rather act like I was a maid in a movie than be one in real life. That's what it was demanded of you to do for you to work. And that was with white folk in charge. Black folk now have some say in what the images in the media is, and I'll be damned if they don't replicate the same stories, the same sad tropes that you see white. Because there's not much original about a Tyler Perry movie. There's not much original about these BET movies, and Lord knows there ain't nothing original about what you see on Tubi. Okay. They're white stories that are regurgitated in blackface. And on the one hand, you can say, well, that's a positive development because race doesn't matter in regards to human suffering and the stories that go with it. Yet at the exact same time, it harkens me back to one of the few things that W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey agreed upon. And that is quite simply, don't we have our own stories? Don't we have our own songs? But when you boil it down to what's going on, let's be honest that your access to reaching your people has to go through white channels. And it's going to be driven by money. If it don't make no money, who's going to do it? If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense.
Wow.
That's the mantra of far too many people.
Exactly. Well, we are at our closing comment sections, Doc. In your closing argument, in your closing comments, can you also talk about, well, I think I'm going to ask you a different question because you really already did that one. Talk about what are the uphill battles to defeat the negative stereotypes of Black people that are floating around here, not just overseas, but right here in America, where you have the new immigrants coming to America and they see us and they ready to say nigga, get here nigga, this is nigga this, nigga that. What is necessary to defeat that type of defamation that we face? All right, you got it.
Once again, just happy to be here, brother. This is a great part of my day and my week, to be honest with you. There's probably no better way of ending a week. But in regards to what you just asked, as far as reversing that, you're talking about a colossal job that's going to take decades, if not centuries, to undo. Because Black folk, and this is probably the most difficult part of the problem, is that Black folk have adopted and they believe those images and those caricatures and those descriptions, along with people who have historically hated us. That's an issue. And it comes, once again, as an educator, it comes from the mind. What is your intellectual diet? What have you consumed that has led you to really believe that many of the more base descriptions of Black life and Black people are valid? And until you really develop analytical skills and the ability to have some time to think about matters such as this, there is no hope for us. Now, in regards to how we undo that image with other folk, I don't think that we need to be concerned with other folks. We need to be focused solely upon how we are dealing with our house and handling what our business is. And really, to go one step further than that, we need to define what we means anymore. Are we talking about all Black folk? Or are we talking about a subset of Black folk who are, in our estimation, savable, if not worthy of being saved? So once again, man, just happy to be here, happy to be in this space, and look forward to seeing y'all this 7 days from now, God willing.
Most definitely. Thank you, Doc. And I want to thank all those in our audience that stayed around and listened to the whole program. I also want to thank those that have decided to come and talk in the chat. We got Tranquil, peace and blessings. Twin Pyramid, peace and blessings. Mac 285, peace and blessings. We got Brother Willie Rivers, peace and blessings. We thank all of you for coming in the chat and spreading and taking time out to be with us today, and as we continue to go forth. And we'll be back next Saturday with another program with Dr. Jones and myself. And I'm probably going to do a program tomorrow because I want to look into this Charlie Kirk situation and how this has wrapped its hands around America and is trying to do some things that just really doesn't make sense to me. But we'll talk about that tomorrow sometime. So as we always say, you kill the nigger in you, I'm going to kill the nigger in me, and our God will reign supreme. We are Black first, today, tomorrow, and forever. Love you, family. Peace and blessings. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom.
Peace.
You better get the message and get it straight. You're going to need some bridge work. It's simple as that. Because we're living in judgment. We're living in implementation.